Hey everyone, we're going to be giving folks a few minutes to trickle in. Hi everyone, great to see you all. We are really excited to kick off a webinar on BPO management and giving you that 360-degree view with the wonderful members from Doc Martens and Partner Hero. This will be a great look into how to select the best BPO for your needs, as well as what great partnership looks like on both sides of the coin. We're going to start off with a round of intros. It's great to see a number of familiar faces and meet some new ones. I am Valerie on the product marketing team here at Assembled. I'll pass it to John to give an intro.
Hi, everyone. My name is John. I am the Senior Customer Experience Manager here at Dr. Martens in the Americas region. It's a pleasure being with you all today. Really looking forward to kind of diving into our experience, not only working with Partner Hero, but Assembled as well. And kind of giving you a peek behind the curtain a little bit of what led us to do business with these folks. And looking forward to talking with you all.
Fantastic. Thanks, John. We'll pass the mic over to Keone.
Hi, thanks so much. I appreciate it, Valerie. Aloha, everyone. My name is Keone Lima. I'm the head of partner operations for North America and EMEA for Partner Hero. I'm located in Boise, Idaho. It's great to be here and be able to see one of our great partners, Doc Martens, with John Bell and the rest of the Assembled team. Looking forward to today's webinar. Thanks for being here.
Fantastic. And we'll wrap up with Adrian.
Hi, all. I'm Adrian. I work with Val here. I'm part of the solutions team here at Assembled. Been doing workforce management for 14 or some odd years, with just about all of those being involved with BPOs or vendors in some capacity. So happy to chat about the workforce management angle on that and how that's journey has been.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. And for those of you all new to Assembled, we are a workforce management and support ops platform helping companies provide great customer support at scale. And as you all know, core workforce management really focuses on putting the right person in the right place at the right time. But as support teams grow, they naturally hit this inflection point in thinking about how do we roll out channels internationally? How can we do this in the most cost-effective way and also maintain high quality? And partnering with BPOs super critical to doing this effectively, and it is a huge focus for our company. And our goal is to help a number of amazing brands and companies we work with as they hit this point. So navigating the evaluation process to managing a complex network of BPOs and really having a great partnership across the board. So really excited to shine light on the Partner Hero and Doc Martens collaboration today. All right, so I would love to start off with 2 questions for the group here. So, how do you all ensure a seamless customer experience across in-house and outsourced teams? And I'll pick on John to start us off with this one.
Great question. That was actually a concern of mine when we kind of went on this adventure of selecting a vendor or a partner as our business continued to expand, was not losing that kind of edge that Docs has. It goes without saying that, Docs has a certain way of operating. And it was really important to us that nobody saw Oz behind the curtain. So when we're looking at making a seamless customer experience between both teams after we launched our program, it was bringing Partner Hero close and bringing them to be inclusive and to include them as if they were a member of our own team. We really wanted not only our customers to feel that, but the folks representing our brand to feel that as well. So we did everything we can to just integrate them into like our enterprise, to integrate them into all of our communications channels as if they were one of our own, with clear boundaries, of course, of what we can and can't do in regards to co-employment. But I think to me that's what makes sense. And that's what, to me, that's the only way to do it, is if you truly want these folks to be an extension of your brand, you have to do it that way, in my opinion, because then if you don't do it that way, there's always going to be a level of separation. And with our brand specifically, it's really important that you represent the values of what we are and what we represent and what we stand for. And so by doing that and bringing folks close and integrating them as if they were members of your own team with some boundaries, that provides a seamless customer experience. And we have found that to be most effective.
Totally. Thanks, John. And would love to hear from the Partner Hero perspective, Keone, on this question.
Yeah, definitely a great question. And certainly many of the things that John has shared, I would reiterate the same. I think from Partner Hero's perspective, my own perspective, as far as that seamless customer experience across teams, again, very much like John said, that cultural alignment is critical, right? And as you enter into partnership, really understanding what each organization is trying to achieve, and making sure that their objectives and their values are, relatively aligned. That alignment is really critical to the relationship building, but it's also critical for the team as the team grows. And the team members are brought in, and the maturity and sophistication of the program grows. That existing understanding of the values and the objectives of what's important to our partner and to Partner Hero are both being achieved on both sides, right? So I think there needs to be a level of trust and authenticity between the two. I often talk about over communicating and having a consistent, ongoing line of communication with the two parties. Making sure that you're both in alignment. You've kind of removed down any blockers or barriers of making things difficult, right? Or having to put more effort into trying to communicate or work together in a partnership. So all of those elements that come into play in helping those two, our partner and us, come together and be able to work together are critical in ensuring that the end user, right, the customer of our partner is getting the best experience possible. So it all starts with the relationship. At the end of the day,
if I can kind of put it in terms that I get it for me, it's like when we first kind of went on this adventure, it's kind of like giving your keys to the 15-year-old and being like, okay, I'm going to be in the car with you for a little bit, but at some point I'm not going to be here. And so it's building that trust with each other. And I'm really glad that we got to the point where I don't care where they drive, but like, it's that for folks that are kind of like in this, like, feel like this spot of like kind of going, okay, we need to give the keys away. I understand that anxiety. And to Keone's point, like open communication and trust are the core tenets of building a great relationship. And yeah, over communicating, I cannot echo that enough, Keone, for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely. Such great points there, and love that analogy, John. But having that open communication and trust, so critical. Pass it along to Adrian to wrap this up on the workforce management perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Val. So my experience with this, it's actually T-Mobile's is where we did this a lot. And this is such a huge thing that T-Mobile is very invested in, with all of the vendor partners being like part of the T-Mobile culture, that I wouldn't be surprised if some of you here have actually seen this on social media pop up. Basically, it's taking whether or not whichever part of the world they're in and making these centers also T-Mobile centers of excellence. So you'll see they do everything where even the CEOs and like that level of leadership will actually fly out and visit these sites. They look just like these internal sites. There's lots of visits from different teams. Even actual agents who perform really well internally will visit these sites and help bring that culture in. And it's just such a great way to, and it really helped shape my thinking of this. This is not your vendor team. This is not your BPO team. This is just the team that happens to be in a different country. This is the team that maybe happens to work overnight because it's their daytime, or does X, Y, or Z. But it is just basically an extension of the team. And when you kind of remove any of that, even thinking about it, some of these more, it flows naturally to just, oh, it's part of the team. It's not anything really that we have to think differently out of that. John brought up a great point. You do have to worry about the co-employment stuff, but I've always worked with some really qualified vendor managers, so I can always let them sort of handle that as well. And then beyond that, it's just the tooling too. This was a big one that T-Mobile made the transition, and then Stripe also went down this path, was the tooling and the training itself is, except for the co-employment parts, it's not any different for internal versus your partners. Unless it's something that's specifically going to come across, clocking in or clocking out with the co-employment, it's exactly the same, top to bottom. The tools are the same, the training's the same. When you call in, you're going to get the exact same experience any time of day, and it all kind of starts with just setting that foundation and going from there. I'm not going to tell you though, but you'd probably be surprised with some of these companies and knowing how much percentage is actually outsourced versus in-house, and you wouldn't even know it because it's actually changed that much in the last few years.
Totally. Extension of your team. Great way to put it, Adrian. All right. So the second question for the group here is around useful performance metrics. So what do you all think are the most useful metrics for evaluating BPO success? This time we'll start off with John.
That's a good question, because when we started on this adventure of finding a BPO, we knew it was important to us as an internal team. But as we were entering this kind of relationship with Partner Hero, we had to kind of look a little deeper and go, okay, we know, we want our CSAT to be this, we want our AHT to be this, but we also had to learn a little bit. And I think one thing that was really helpful with Partner Hero as we onboarded with them is we had those conversations, and they were a two-way dialogue. It wasn't just me saying, here's what we want. It was them saying, what's important to you? How can we do this? How can we be a good partner? And what are the levers, that we can pull to make success happen? So, one thing that's really important to our brand, as I mentioned earlier, is just how we service folks in general, because our brand is over 60 years old and people have an affinity to it for a variety of reasons. So customer satisfaction was huge for us. And so in working with them right up front and just saying, hey, this is one of our key metrics. It's really important to us, and here's why, because it really ties into our value system. On top, and like when you have CSAT, like as your kind of main North Star, at least in our world, all the other things kind of happen because we know how important that is. And it gives less anxiety around chasing like this metric, because as long as you have like your North Star really set around like the touchy-feely stuff, like the soft stuff, like the soft stuff is the hardest stuff to do, right? Like it's you either have it or you don't. So you can rush anybody through a call if you want, but a customer will know exactly what you're doing by trying to get you off the phone. So in our conversations, that's how we led. And that's how we continue to lead. Our program is customer satisfaction. And I will say one thing that was really surprising was when your BPO starts to outpace your own team. Just full transparency. And that's the best feeling to have. Humbling, but it's also a really great feeling knowing that there's somebody else in your corner that cares just as much as you do.
Awesome to hear, John, especially that focus on, at the end of the day, this CSAT being the North Star metric that matters. And then that last bit that you talked about with outpacing your own team definitely must be an awesome feeling as well. Adrian, would love your take on some of the metrics for success.
Yeah, so maybe I'll switch gears a little bit here because my background is very much on like the workforce side. So for me, it is really kind of the main metric, and this is what everything else builds off of, is am I getting as a client, am I getting what I'm paying for, what I'm asking for? And I'm going to just boil that down to, let's just say, hours of work. So if I can go to my partner and say, I need this amount of hours, whether or not they can meet that, as long as they can meet the commitment is what I really care about. If you're going to be under, but you actually deliver what you said, we can work with that. And having that commitment of hours, on a weekly basis down to the actual interval basis, when we come up to that, the people actually show up, they're there. That helps everything else fall into place. So all the metrics and everything else that John was talking about, now for me from the workforce side, I know that there's a competent team over there that's doing what they are supposed to be doing. They're providing us back the amount of workload that we need. And then beyond that, I can start to trust and say, we've got this built out. Now let's work on the handle times, on the adherence, everything else can kind of build off of that, because we know when we have a trusting relationship that we're actually going to get kind of delivered what we were asking for. And then even take this a step further, which I like to do as well. Having that and having the competent workforce team and having them build that out gives you that tangential benefit of, you may not have to build up as much of your internal workforce team, because now your vendor is also providing you something else that maybe wasn't explicit in the contract of hours, but they've got a competent workforce team that can take things off your hands and help you not have to hire that extra RTA or extra planner, things like that they're able to then take in-house for you. So that to me is key. It's from the workforce lens. I feel once we build that trust, once we're getting delivered, everything else can come after that. People may have a bit of a different opinion on it, but that's where I like to start with.
Absolutely. Always useful to hear the workforce management perspective, Adrian, and making sure you have total trust in that side as well. We'll have Keone take us home with this one.
Yeah, great points from Adrian and John. I think at the end of the day, right, when you look at what key performance indicators are going to ensure the success or evaluate the success of your partnership or your program, I think number one is to have key performance indicators. I think that's a critical component when you enter into the relationship, is to understand at some point, hopefully early in the relationship, you're both under an understanding that there is a value in understanding the measurement of the team and having those measurements at least established to a soft degree is going to be really critical to the success of the program, particularly in that first 6 to 12 months. A lot of organizations come to us. They're startups. They don't have a lot of visibility to KPIs, and that's where we can come in and we can assist with the data components and helping them look at industry standards of what KPIs are going to be in alignment with what they're trying to achieve. But having them is a key objective. I think secondly, every brand and partner that we work with has different objectives, right? And whether it's the point of contact or it's the vendor manager or it's the organization or the C-suite, whatever it is that's making those decisions, we as the provider, as the BPO, need to have a clear understanding of what those objectives are. One objective for Doc Martin is going to be different from another partner or another brand. Once we have a clear understanding of what those objectives are, we can customize or recommend what KPIs are most critical to that particular sector, to that industry, and are going to help you achieve or reinforce what you're trying to achieve. I think one of the other things we see often, right, is, well, we're measuring this because we've always just measured it, right? And I think that's one of the great things about the relationship with your BPO is having that two-way dialogue of understanding that's a KPI you've always measured. Why are you measuring it? What are you attaining from that KPI? How are you measuring it? And are you truly getting the ROI out of it that's critical, and for you to reach the objective that you're trying to reach? And then finally, I would say, if you're a point of contact, your vendor manager, you're working on behalf of your support team for your particular brand, at the end of the day, some KPIs that are going to be really critical for you are your return of investment, your cost per contact. At the end of the day, cost is a big variable for the organizations and brands that come to us and partners that come to us. And so having a visibility into that is an important component. And then, like Adrian, like what you said, the efficiency KPIs will come, right? Adherence to schedule, average handle time, productivity, occupancy, those things all naturally come into play organically. You can certainly turn that thermostat up. But as John said, those quality elements, things like CSAT, quality assurance, effort score, one touch resolution or one call resolution are KPIs that are really going to ensure the quality of service is important and just as valuable as the efficiencies of the service as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Keone, for all of that insight there. And actually, love to poll the audience a bit and get a sense of how many BPOs your team has, if you currently do have BPOs. So we're going to publish this poll and always love to get your thoughts here. And then also just a couple of quick admin things that I actually had meant to mention earlier. So for questions, the best place to submit those are in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You can see the questions icon there, and that will just help us get to those in the most timely way possible rather than the chat. And then at the end of the webinar, you will have access to a recording that will be sent out along with further information and contact info for all the folks featured. All right, so while we are waiting for some folks to answer the poll, I figured this could be a good time for us to take one or two questions before diving in further. So let's take a look here. Some of the questions. I see a few that trickled into the chat. Actually, one for John from another John. Is maintaining that cultural alignment difficult when you haven't been involved in the hiring process for the BPO agents?
Great question. That was a pain point for me as like I said, like we didn't know who we were giving the keys to of the car. It was like, all right, here we go. But one thing that when I was seeking out a vendor was what my level of involvement would be with the hiring profile, because that's so important when you are looking to emulate what you've done internally, is going, here's what my hiring profile looks like. Here is what we hope for in qualities of a great agent. And that's something I really enjoyed about working with Partner Hero is they're like, okay, yeah, cool. And we did that. And that's rare to have, at least in my experience of kind of going through the RFP process of giving a hiring profile that met the moment and met what our brand stood for. And it made sense for us to do that. And that was kind of like one of the deciding factors for me, at least, in selecting Partner Hero, is actually having kind of a little bit of a say in that. And I think the thing what that does is it sets a standard right up front of what your expectations are of performance. And so it makes conversations later on when you see somebody on the leaderboard or not on the leaderboard slipping, you've already set that standard at the front. So you're able to have that conversation and being like, hey, this isn't, meeting what we hope. So, yeah, bottom line up front, you got to be very honest with what your expectations are, and then it makes conversations easier in the future when something might not go right. Hope that helps.
Fantastic. Thanks, John, for that. And then I think we'll actually get into a lot more of the meat of this question throughout the webinar, but maybe as a quick primer for folks. This is a question from Dennis. For startups considering tapping a BPO for the first time, where should they start? Where is a BPO effective, and where are they quite frankly not?
Yeah, and I think if it's okay, Valerie, I'll just jump in really quickly. I think we'll probably, like you said, address some of this in further in the webinar. But again, I would come back to the fact of truly understand what objectives you're trying to achieve, right? And if you have a clarity that we really need cost savings, right? Or we need scalability, or we need a team that is an expert in quality assurance or workforce management and needs someone that's has the ability to pivot quickly, right? If you're able to identify those things or understand that those are the goals or objectives you're trying to achieve, then business outsourcing as a BPO is a great solution to look at. Obviously, the biggest variable that most folks look for, right, is the cost savings. But there's a lot of other components there that you can find in that relationship. And then it's kind of, and John can speak to this, right? I think it's start the shopping process, right? It's reaching out to the different BPOs that are out there. I encourage taking a look at all of them. It can get easy to get wrapped up in one of them, or if it's just Partner Hero, but really go out there and go through the RFP process with as many as that are aligned. They get a true vision and expectation of what you're getting at the end of the day.
So yeah, I think that's really great, and I love the second part of that question, Dennis. Is like, where is the BPO effective and where are they quite frankly not? And I kind of think at this point, that's a question that pops up, and it's almost like it's time to challenge that, because BPOs and outsourcing and having partners come in, it's everywhere in our lives. I mean, even at like the airport, you've got other companies that come in and do it. So at this point, it's probably worth thinking, even if a couple of years ago, you're like, maybe this isn't worth it to outsource. That's probably changed. And you can find somebody out there who can actually help you out with that and get all the benefits that we're chatting about. I mean, basically anything can be done at this point, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Great points, Adrian Keone. So I think we're going to shift gears a bit and chat with John a bit more about the process of searching for a BPO and what collaboration looks like. So to start off, how did you go about searching for the right BPO provider to partner with, John? And what was it about Partner Hero that won you over?
It's a loaded question. I'm kidding. No, I think as a CX leader, you know what good CX looks like. Like you know what your ideal experience is. And when you are engaging with these companies or brands, these BPOs, you hope that that's emulated in their process of prospecting, right? And like, so when you're filling out their web form, when they're contacting you, when they're getting in touch and asking questions, to me, that was a huge selling point of, okay, what does that look like? What does their own customer experience look like when they're trying to earn my business and my trust? So that went into a big piece of it, was like the ease of getting in touch, the ease of, talking to somebody that can really kind of listen and understand what my challenges are. We launched our program last year, right before the holiday, and I needed somebody that could just come in quickly and kind of just go, here we go. And like, we started off like with not a lot of training. We didn't even have a dedicated trainer at the time. So like, we literally had to find somebody quickly that could help us scale. With Partner Hero, when we talked to them, on their website, they had their value system just right front and center. And that really said a lot to us for those of us who are part of the selection process. And they, there's a lot of things that Keone will probably jump into, but one thing that we were really concerned about internally was going into other geographies, because we've always been US based. And so we initially were like, we really want to be US based, but also understood the value of going near and offshore. And we had to do some soul searching internally as to why we were concerned with that. And so that was an interesting adventure to kind of go through internally. But with Partner Hero, as the conversations progressed, it just became really easy. They, modeled some stuff out for us, and we were in a position where we needed to act pretty quickly. We never sent our work out to a BPO before, so there was a little anxiety there, and that was calmed pretty quickly because they had worked with folks similar in our similar position of like helping us scale, helping us grow. Like I mentioned earlier, our brand has been around a long time, but boy, are we popular right now. And so we, they were a trusted partner, and our values aligned, and that's huge. When you have a very similar value system, that says a lot. And that's not just to get the sale, that comes to life in working with them. And that's been my experience. So that kind of is what won us over, is that it wasn't just to get the sale and to close the deal. It was, the relationship has only strengthened since then.
That is amazing to hear around the strengthening relationship, and also so important to have a similar value system. And now that you both have worked together for quite some time, would love to hear a bit more about what communication and collaboration looks like between you and Partner Hero.
Yeah, so the operations manager I work with, he and I have a wonderful relationship. I believe we're cut from the same cloth in several aspects of our professional life. So that is helpful, and just Partner Hero placing a great ops manager with us to help us kind of grow, to understand kind of what our opportunities were. It's, as I mentioned earlier, it's like, bringing folks close in, involving them in meetings, involving them in decisions, because it impacts their folks, being stakeholders in certain, in some decisions, but also, helping us inform other decisions and helping us understand, some blind spots we might not see. Our team has certainly evolved internally since launching our program a year ago. We have become more of a support to Partner Hero versus like us just touching tickets, which that's the goal, right? We're doing those more high value things. So for us to be successful, great communication, and being honest with each other as well. So when things don't go right, that we are able to have those conversations because we've established that level of rapport with each other. We've are also, as I mentioned, the brand is growing, and I'm lean on Partner Hero quite a bit to help me see kind of, 6 months ahead and going, okay, here's what our forecast might look like. Help me plan for that. Here's some changes in the business that are going to occur that we're going to probably see some more contacts. Help me plan for that. And I can lean on them to help me do that as like an advisor, because they have done that for a lot of other brands. And I think that's what differentiates our relationship with them versus some of the larger like folks that you see out there that, have much larger levels of operation. You don't get that level of touch. And I appreciate that, because it's so important to our brand that we just maintain our authenticity at its core. And all of what I just said really helps advance that.
Fantastic to hear there around the trust, collaboration, and just really trusting, Partner Hero to accommodate the spikes in your business, anything unexpected, and just like have that amazing holistic relationship. Shifting gears a little bit to Keone here at Partner Hero. Love to hear a bit more about some of the most common misconceptions about outsourced support and what Partner Hero is doing to change that.
Yeah, great question. I think BPO has been around for many, many years. And unfortunately, there still are misconceptions that come to mind when folks consider outsourcing. I think some of the most common are, my quality of service, my quality is going to decrease or be impacted if I outsource. Efficiency, productivity is going to go down if I outsource. The cost savings might be there, but we're going to have struggles because there's a disconnect. We can't connect with them. We don't have the access. We don't have the communication in order to be able to correct something as quickly as we would be able to internally. And in all transparency, I think this is an important variable. I think there's misconceptions out there on it's kind of like what John mentioned, really looking at your bias, right, of the different geographies around the world. I know we have a lot of programs and partners that are looking for cost savings, but they're looking for global coverage. But again, in all transparency, they struggle with the idea of being able to get their brand or their service or support in a location like Honduras or Manila, where there could be language barriers in some instances or heavy accents, and that can be a challenge for some organizations as they are considering those types of things. So in all of that, when what are we doing at Partner Hero, obviously to eliminate or ease some of those misconceptions on the board? I think one of the things is BPO for us, we're not a cookie cutter provider, right? Every partner and brand that comes to us that's looking for a service, we have spent years putting together our particular model of customizing what that team looks like. It's not a just add water, right, model. It's really about building the relationship. It's about truly understanding your objectives. It's about making sure that we're culturally aligned, that our values are somewhat aligned, and that the importance of having that alignment is seen by both sides. And then customizing and creating that team so that it's truly going to fit and achieve what you're trying to achieve and get it right the first time. Other things, like when I talked a little bit about, global geographies, I think one of the great things that I'm super proud of when it comes to Partner Hero is that we've been able to create our hubs in these communities that are somewhat marginalized. We've built beautiful centers. They're absolutely gorgeous. We are paying, very good wages. And folks in many of these areas have been with us for multiple years and have a true career where normally they may not have had that particular type of opportunity. The other thing that you'll hear a lot about, if you're looking at global coverage for Partner Hero, again, coming back to the language barrier, we're hiring and selecting associates and leaders that are aligned to what you're looking for. So if you say Partner Hero, I'm open to outsourcing in Honduras or Manila or Brazil or a different location. But it's really important that my customers not have a language barrier or a degree of accent. We have teams that have been speaking English since, their first years in grade school, where you'll be able to hear and listen to those tests, those audio clips, and be able to realize, oh wow, it's not what I thought it was, and it's actually a great level of service. So there's things that we're doing there to kind of remove those barriers and biases that might exist. And then just kind of originally back to the original comments that I made, it's really critical that we have that over communication. Like John and the operations manager, the two of them have a great relationship because there is so much communication. It is very easy for John to be able to contact his operations manager and vice versa. We're doing things like weekly business reviews, monthly business reviews, quarterly business reviews with the stakeholders in your organization, within your brand, so that you're seeing that the team is achieving what they need to achieve or getting it right the first time. So there's a lot of transparency there from our organization in order to really ensure that, again, that our partners have a high degree of reassurance that things are getting done. So those are all things that kind of come to mind when it comes to, misconceptions and what we're doing to help alleviate some of those concerns.
Totally love the emphasis on the over communication piece to build that trust, as well as empowering folks across all geographies. All right, so another question for you, Keone, is what are the biggest reasons your customers have sought outsourced support in the past year in particular?
Yeah, another great question. And again, in all transparency, at the end of the day, I think one of the great benefits of business outsourcing, business process outsourcing, BPO, is the cost savings. I don't think there's a single partner or program that I could go to and be like, what's your number one driver, right, for coming to a BPO and not hearing cost at the end of the day as either the most critical or in the top three of what they're trying to achieve. So cost savings is a big driver, especially with our existing climate. I mean, that's the right term, economic climate. Cost savings is a big variable there. The other thing that we see a lot of is, again, I mentioned this, scalability and agility, right? It can be very difficult and very expensive for a brand or an organization to say, hey, we have a seasonal period that's 90 days long. Our forecasts indicate that we're going to get 100,000 tickets in this 90-day period of time. We've got 2 internal CST members, but the cost and the logistics that go into me hiring a team of 30 people is just, it's not reasonable for our organization. First of all, I don't have anywhere to put them. I don't have the resources to hire that many people. The scalability that BPOs bring is another big driver that comes to play, whether it's headcount, seasonality, the ability to pivot quickly. Hey, I want to turn that on, turn that off. Those are all things that also attract folks to places like Partner Hero. Global coverage is another variable that comes into play. All brands at some point that we work with look at, hey, we're looking at possibly stepping into this particular market. We're thinking about maybe expanding our coverage into EMEA or Latin America. Again, very expensive and complicated to do internally. Partner Hero BPO is a good solution for that as well. And then I think the last 2 things that kind of come to mind for me, there are organizations that have their own internal teams, right? And they're amazing. But there are components that can be missing from some of those teams. For example, you might have a partner like Doc Martens that says, look, our internal team's doing great. Your team, the Partner Hero team's doing great. We don't have a workforce management group. We don't have a quality team. We're looking for a data team. Whatever that gap might be, kind of to Adrian's point about what he mentioned earlier, BPO is a fantastic solution to reach out to somewhere like Partner Hero and say, hey, we really just need somebody for X number of hours per month, per week, per day, per year to help us with workforce management. Now, yeah, sure, you could go hire a senior workforce manager analyst and pay 120 grand a year, or you could reach out to a BPO like Partner Hero and be able to fractionally bring that service and get that product in at a margin, a very small margin of what you would have paid, and still get the great quality of service and end result. So there's any of those particular specialties, BPO is a great solution for that. And then I think finally it's right, either quality of service with your existing vendor, the champion challenger, right? If you've already got existing partners or vendors or BPOs that you're working with, the champion challenger quality of service variable is a big thing. I'm always a big proponent of having multiple BPOs. If in a healthy relationship, they're driving each other's performance. You're able to evaluate where each of those organizations stand. You've got contingency plans if things go down, you've got another team that that can be there to support that. But it creates a very organic and holistic relationship where, hey, we're working together. This team performs at this level. Partner Hero is performing at this level, and that competition, right, keeps the relationship fresh, healthy, and the team's moving forward in that particular aspect. And of course, if you do have a vendor or a BPO that's not performing well, we get partners that also come to us saying, hey, we're kind of shopping. We're not getting what we want from X. Could Partner Hero possibly come in and get it right? So those are kind of the drivers as far as biggest reasons that I see folks reaching out to our business development sales teams for.
Thank you, Keone. Really interesting there. All right, so we're going to shift gears now to the workforce management perspective with Adrian. And actually before that, we're going to throw out a quick poll to just get a sense of what aspects in managing BPOs would you like to most improve and what your biggest pain points are. So I'm going to send that out to the group. And then Adrian, start us off with a question around, as a workforce manager, how does the impact of managing both in-house and outsourced teams change as you go from one to many BPOs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's start off with when you have that one BPO. This is where a lot of companies, right, find themselves. It's just natural to find that first partner to go with. And then for everything we've been saying, sometimes you just need to test the waters and see if this is really where you want to go. And then, of course, you'll see the light and be like, yeah, I actually do really want to go down this path and I want to invest more in outsourcing this. When you have this one vendor, you can, and for lack of a better term here, you can be a little lazy with them if you want. You built up that good relationship. You've got somebody like Partner Hero on the other side. You're like, I have a lot of trust built up. So I'm just going to maybe just send you raw volumes over, or maybe I'm going to even let you hook directly up to my CRM and just pull the data out of there. And then, as we were talking about with workforce, is something that can also be outsourced. Just you run with it. Basically, tell me the amount of hours I'm going to need, show me that you're delivering these and the performance metrics and things like that. And everything is good. We're set. We're agreeing on the price. It fits in our budget, and we can continue to go down that route. Once you start to introduce that second vendor, that is where you have the basically two and beyond. It's once you set things up for two, it kind of scales to beyond at that point. And this is where, to me, you really do need to start bringing some things in house, or, and this is another option too, set up a vendorized, a BPOized workforce management that is at least some way impartial. Maybe it's another vendor, maybe it's a specific team that's carved out, and they can do this work for you as well. But the reason you need to do that and have that kind of like stepping stone to the next one is now you've got two. So now you have to think about things like splitting the volumes. And beyond splitting the volumes, turning these split volumes into the actual requirements, because now they may not have the exact same performance. In fact, if they had the exact same performance, I'd be super surprised, because we're working with people here and it's not exactly the same. So then you have to turn into requirements for vendor A and vendor B and then blend these back together. Is that actually going to get me to where I need to go? Then you have different performance metrics and you need to start looking at those. How are they trending this way? That kind of comes back into where am I going to send the volume or send the staffing to take that sort of volume. This gets compounded when you have maybe different skills, especially different languages, because that is often not fungible. You can get a lot of English speakers and then a lot of bilingual speakers, but for the most part, your English speakers don't often speak another language. It's the other way around. So you got to balance that. How can I move people between queues? Hoops, hours of operation. That is a huge one. This is the one that will drive you pretty crazy when you may have vendors that are not working the exact same time. So now you're splitting up requirements to them throughout the day, but it may be a 50-50 split during certain times. Then one vendor goes offline and now it all goes to the other vendor. But once again, we're working with people. So you need to kind of smooth out those transitions so there's not cliffs. It's really hard to go from maybe 5 people staffed to 100 people staffed in one interval for a vendor as well. So just all these little pieces that can pop into there. And you really have to start thinking, wow, this is like an actual arm of the business we need to build out and figure out how we're going to have them blend together. Some things as well too, are your vendors going to have a line of communication between them? At T-Mobile, this is not something that we necessarily encourage, but I'll say that the vendor space is not the biggest space in the world. So there's a lot of people that just know each other and communicate back and forth. But at Stripe, we actually had vendors that would specifically help to train other vendors and spin them up, even though that is technically a competitor for them. But they're in different time zones. There's not that much overlap, and it actually worked out really well. So just another thing to consider as you go down that. We have multiple ones to work with. There's the workforce side. There's the training side. How are we going to deliver this? How are we going to get the performance measured? How are we going to coach to that performance? How are we going to send, requirements out now that we used to just let them handle it? How are we going to do it for the next week and then 6 months from now or a year from now? And then how is their hiring plans going to come in? Some places may be very, very quick to hire. I've worked with a vendor before that was in a small area of Oregon, and they had to go out to the bars and places on the weekend to try to get people to sign up and come into the classes. They were a great vendor, but it was really hard because they were in a small area. So I could just keep going down the list with things that you have to consider. But I think those are some of the big ones. And at that point, you got to say, all right, we're bringing this in-house, or at least we're putting more eyes on it to having a much more of an active management instead of just letting them take over from there.
Fantastic. Really insightful, Adrian. Second question for you is around the role of workforce management software, and specifically, what role does WFM software play in keeping in-house and outsourced teams on the same page?
Yeah, this is a great question, and it seems perfect for working at Assembled here. I'll say the first thing here. Yes, workforce software. That's something you need to start looking at sooner rather than later. And this is not just a plug, for Assembled, because go ahead and do it in spreadsheets and hit me up on LinkedIn and let me know how that goes after 6 months when you've got this web of Google Sheets that has to communicate, and then Google has an outage and it goes down. So I've been down that route. I have a fondness in my heart for spreadsheets, but you've got to move to the software and bite the bullet and do that. The big thing is just having all of that data in one place that is not going to break. It's going to be in a common database. It's going to have common metrics, things like that. When you have workforce software, somebody like myself can't go in and mess up a formula. You can't go in and accidentally remove something. I worked with a vendor back in the day at T-Mobile. They probably renamed now, but their name was C3, which is a cell reference in Excel. So even just that was a problem trying to put it into Excel. So if you have that in workforce software, you're not having this weird sort of reference. You need to bring them into the system here. You can get their performance. But more importantly, I guess if we're going back to how you're communicating out like the demands, the needs that you're going to actually need from the vendors, when you have that in the software, you can look back and say, hey, 6 months ago, we asked for this much, you agreed to this much. 3 months ago, you asked for this much, or we asked for this much, you agreed to this much. And then here we are coming into the actual week and what was actually delivered. And you just kind of have that system of record, having it in the workforce software. Everybody knows how that's flowing through to the individual intervals. More importantly, you now also aren't having to possibly just rely on, once again, spreadsheets with the staffing that's coming back. If you have really, really heavily integrated vendors into your software, you may actually be able to see the specific agent schedules and not just net staffing that's coming in. So that unlocks a whole huge world of possibilities where now you can see specifically what's coming up with the agent schedules, and even get signed in unexpectedly reports that are feeding in. You may not, as the customer, want to always have that visibility, but it's nice to have it if you do need to go down that route. And then once you have that all set up, give your vendors some access to your systems as well. And now you're all speaking the same language. You're using the same system. You're all seeing the exact same data, and the confusion that just goes away with that. You're like, well, if it's not in the system, then we don't really need to argue about it because it's already there and we're all working on the same page. So huge proponent of getting into the software, getting onto that same page. Once again, I could list off probably 100 more things. But as you get into there's just all these little quality of life improvements that you'll find having everybody in the same software solution.
Absolutely. All right. So we have a final question now for everyone, and it's a bit spicy. What are the most common mistakes support teams make when working with a BPO? And would love to have Keone start us off with this one.
Yeah, another great question. And looking at some of the common mistakes that support teams can run into when working with an outsourcer, I think number one is on both sides, right? You want to make it effortless and easy for there to be communication, right? If there are blockers or several chains or gated methods on how they communicate, how they're able to provide feedback, how you are meeting with and evaluating the team's performance, if that can't happen, your disconnect is going to get bigger and bigger over a period of time. So from the very beginning, establish a strong, trusting relationship where you have open dialogue and an open form of communication with each other. Again, overly communicate is the best thing that I can say in the beginning. I think the second thing, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, have a basic understanding of the objectives you're trying to achieve, right? A lot of times we move very quickly, launch is happening, we've got to do it in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. But at some point, as the point of contact or the vendor manager for that particular partner brand, really sit down and say, okay, what do I want? What does good look like for this team? How can I measure that particular element? And within a short period of time, and as soon as you can with data available, try and get some type of KPIs either recommended or access to that information available, and we can assist, the BPO can assist in being able to determine what that good looks like and what those KPIs are. That data component piece is a really critical piece. And I can't stress that enough. And I understand there are limitations, right? A lot of the startups that we work with may not be sophisticated with something like a Zendesk or the CRM, and they may not understand how to pull data out of these complex systems like Salesforce. Lean into the BPO, right? And trust the relationship to say, look, you're our partner. We are here together trying to achieve these objectives. If you can provide access to that data and trust in that relationship, or allow some type of export to occur to where that operations manager, the data team can have access to the data in some degree. It's a critical component because it's going to be able to tell the team where they're at, what they're doing, are they achieving what they're trying to achieve. The data's not there, it's really difficult. And that can be one of the challenges in the beginning of these relationships, because you're trying to achieve X, but we really don't know how or when or what it's going to take to get there if we can't access the data or the performance of the program. So yeah, just a couple of quick things that come to mind. Communication, get data available, and set those performance standards as soon as you can.
Fantastic. Thanks, Keone. Adrian, any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, so I am going to take the spicy take here. And one of the biggest mistakes I see is that you go and you start to work with an outsourced support team, and you never go and see them or bring them to you. This, once again, has been like through my career, I've seen this happen more and more. Honestly, going and having, beyond the like actual work connections and being able to see things on site, but like the personal connections you'll make. And then when I'm talking to somebody that I've seen in person, and then we have that better relationship, honestly, it's such a huge, win. Either way, they come to see you, and honestly, that can be really great too, to be like, hey, here's how the main company does it as well. Or you go and you see them and you bring other teams. It's not just like the specific like vendor management team or maybe your training team. I've gone from workforce to go visit as well. We brought IT. We have brought people that have literally watched and seen how the agents are using the tools and hearing their frustrations firsthand, because they're the ones like, when I click this, it doesn't work. And that's really hard to explain over this email. Just made it huge. And just the amount of benefits you'll get, not all of them are 100% tangible and measurable right away, but it will pay dividends in the long run.
We'll have John take us home.
Yeah, so for anybody that's here that's considering, engaging with a BPO or reaching out, I would say the moment that you make that decision, make sure that you have enough runway and you're giving yourself time to kind of gather your own, resources internally to be prepared to launch that. When I stepped into this role and realized pretty quickly that we needed to make this move, I gathered everybody internally very close, very quickly, and basically said, hey, here's what we're going to be doing versus what we've done in the past. And that was a shift internally. We had to really kind of change some hearts and minds about giving access to a third party of, some of our internal systems, and just making sure that we had all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed from that perspective, so that when we did start, that we could show results and they could understand why those results matter, because they played nicely, if you will. So I would say, yeah, if you have a BPO, great, what that dance looks like. But if you're here and you're kind of going, yes, I kind of want to think about doing that, bring people close. I mean, we all love our CFO, but bring them very close, bring IT very close, just so they have a full understanding of kind of what's kind of going to happen and like what it looks like We even had conversations, because we'd never outsourced before, of what naming conventions look like. And there was this back and forth of that for emails and how we could identify folks. Because as I mentioned, we have brought Partner Hero pretty close. Everybody has a Doc Martens email address. So that just goes to show the level of communication that we have with folks that are our partners, because that's important to us. And so, yeah, everybody's in our directory, everybody's in Outlook. We can contact anybody, there that we want. So I think that, as you're kind of looking forward to maybe do this, if you need it by Q2 of next year, start now. and just start the work now and do the legwork now. These folks, we'll be happy to work with you. But start the work now, because it's a lot to take on. But at the end of the day, the end product is totally worth it.
All right. Thank you so much, John, Keone, Adrian, for taking the time to give your amazing insights to the group today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will be sending out a recording promptly after this session. And let us know if you have any questions or thoughts. See you all at the next one.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.